That sounds good. We're going to talk to you today about feedback, fear of feedback, because in today's world where people change jobs often and the cast of characters at work changes so often, being able to assess where you are in your company or your organization is critical to the success of your career. People need feedback at work. Similarly, people need to have their subordinates doing their best work, and that means they need to give their subordinates feedback. But in our experience, people do not either give or get the feedback that they need. Jay and I have been doing HR consulting for a number of years, and what we find is a feedback void in many of the companies that we consult in. We're generally not brought in to consult about feedback. Generally, we're brought in to consult about other HR issues. But over time, we began to notice that feedback was the root cause, or lack of feedback was the root cause of some of the problems that we were seeing. And the problems were twofold. They were about getting feedback and giving feedback. There seemed in some places to be almost a two-way conspiracy of silence. Let me give you a couple of examples. We were asked to consult in a high-tech company where most of the managers were formerly engineers who were inexperienced in dealing with people. They had moved to the top based on their engineering expertise, not on their people skills, and they were very uncomfortable giving feedback and asking for feedback. We worked in a professional services company where partners were not giving associates the feedback they needed. We had one amusing incident where an associate told us that a couple of months after he'd come to the company, he ran into one of the partners on the stairwell, and the partner talked to him for about 10 minutes, and he has been living on that feedback, the 10-minute feedback, for the past 3 years, because that was the only feedback that he had gotten from that partner. We worked in a transportation company where the CEO set the culture, and he said it was a small company, he said he was just too busy to give feedback, that there were so many important things going on, and that culture filtered down throughout the entire company, so that at the time we got there, there were people who hadn't received their raises for 6 months. They were all assured that the raises would be retroactive, but the rule was you couldn't get your raise until you'd had a performance evaluation, and all the performance evaluations were at least 6 months overdue. In another high-tech company where we consulted, the culture was a culture of criticism. The view was that people do their best work when they are in fear of their lives every time they do a presentation. And so you could be sure when you did a presentation that your work would be cut and shredded, and people were terrified of giving or asking for feedback because everybody knew that there was so much criticism going on. At least half the executives we've worked with never ask for feedback. They're afraid that asking their boss for feedback will lead to arguments and new demands, maybe even being fired. They avoid the truth, and they try to guess what it is their bosses want. They drift into what we call maladaptive behaviors. And the underlying model that we have is that people fear giving feedback and getting feedback. So the underlying emotion is fear. And out of that fear stem a whole bunch of maladaptive behaviors. This is not a full list, but procrastination, denial, brooding, jealousy, self-sabotage are all maladaptive behaviors resulting from the underlying fear. Some others are confusion and blame. Sometimes the behaviors spring from anger that